Hello, everyone. My name is Bernadette Smith. I am CEO of Equality Institute, and I'd like to welcome you to Five Things in 15 Minutes with my special guest, Patti Flynn. Patti, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Patti Flynn. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior strategy consultant with the Equality Institute, and I'm happy to be
Thank
here
you.
today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Or thank you for joining me. So I want to first apologize for those folks who are not able to enjoy this show because the software is not allowing closed captions. We've been testing out a new software. Apparently, that feature is not a feature of the software. So we're going to go back to our old software until things are squared away there. So I apologize about that. I mean, after all, this is a show about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I feel terrible that closed captions are not a feature here. So we're going to work that out. Anyway, welcome to Five Things in 50 Minutes. We are starting a little bit late today, again, because of software issues. Five Things in 15 Minutes is my weekly LinkedIn live show in which I talk about diversity, about good vibes in diversity, equity, and inclusion and corporate social responsibility with a special guest. Every week, I write a newsletter called Five Things that goes out on Saturday morning, and I share good stories, inspirational ideas that of things that are working, things that are going right in the DEI and corporate social responsibility space. And then on Mondays, I'm joined by a special guest in which we talk about these five things in 15 minutes. All right, so Patti, let's get this show on the road. First story from this week is about how LinkedIn is now allowing users to add a new skill if it applies to them. And that skill is called dyslexic thinking. And it's a skill. I love this because it's like a reframe of something that has historically been considered a deficit. It's a reframe of dyslexic thinking as an asset. I love this.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I've not been diagnosed. I'm ADHD. I'm a visual type learner, and so I think that it's really important to understand a little bit more in depth about how people do things, and I think it's good to destigmatize that whole. I mean, all of these different things that need to be destigmatized. This is one of them, but I think it's a real good positive move. And it's a shame sometimes that it takes a billionaire to push things like this that need to change. But
Well, yeah. So the billionaire that you're referring to is Richard Branson, who is founder and CEO of Virgin Enterprises, and it was Richard Branson's. He's sort of he's the leader behind this movement to recategorize dyslexia as a skill, because honestly, dyslexia can bring great problem solving and creative thinking skills to work and otherwise. And I think it actually this is a really good tie-in to autism. It's Autism Awareness Month, and we're seeing autism being and the people on the autism spectrum being reframed as just another form of diversity. It's just neurodiversity, and I think it's these ideas go hand in hand, and there's lots of different ways to do things, lots of different ways folks think, and I think taking away the stigma from that can allow more really talented folks to get jobs and participate fully in the workplace.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as someone who is not neurotypical and has had to work through ADHD, there's a lot of positive things that come from it, in addition to the things that are, I don't know, made fun of. So it's really good to see the positivity of dyslexia being discussed, as opposed to just always relying on and using those narratives of negativity towards these different kinds of thinking.
Absolutely. Okay, so next story is from the Air Force. This is a story I was very surprised by, but the US Air Force, has let its personnel know that they will help families relocate or with medical and legal help if those families are personally affected by the new onslaught of anti-LGBTQ laws in various states, especially those laws that particularly target transgender children. So the Air Force, we've seen some private companies speak up and say, hey, we'll help you with this. But the US Air Force, I think that's a really big win and something that should be celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, celebrate at the same time is like, what? We shouldn't have to do this, but yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's very good that there's an acknowledgement that these state legislatures have overstepped, and it's a way for people to be able to escape that. It's so hard for a lot of folks to get out, especially if you're stationed somewhere that, in Texas, for example. So that being able to move your assignment, it's really a positive, uh, allowing these families to get to places that are going to be a little bit better for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a, one of my personal, like, the reason I do what I do really comes down to creating spaces where people can feel safe. I feel very strongly about personal safety and emotional safety. And I think that the Air Force making this decision or announcing this initial policy is just really helping folks, especially young trans children,
Yeah,
it's just creating safety. And the Air Force employs hundreds of thousands of people. So this is not just something that affects, even 10 or 20,000, which would be a lot, but this could potentially impact, thousands of families.
right.
And it's really significant.
Yeah, yeah, it is. This is a big step. So, as a trans woman myself, um, these laws are very harmful, and I can feel the reverberation even myself. And so these kids who live in these states can definitely feel it. And so this opportunity to be able to go somewhere to feel safer is really important.
Absolutely. I completely agree. All right, so the next story is about inclusive architecture, specifically about the architecture design for folks who are hearing impaired. So, this architect named Richard Doherty, who happens to be deaf himself, has created an architecture philosophy called Deaf Space. And the first major project is on the campus of Gallaudet University in DC, which is a university for deaf students. And the architecture actually contains more than 150 elements that take into account the distinct way deaf people relate to their physical environment. But it's inclusive of everyone, and they're actually creating spaces that are open to the neighborhoods. It's inclusive for everyone because, for example, spherical designs give everyone equal access, and spherical designs where there's no hierarchy are actually really optimal for deaf folks so that they can better read lips.
Right.
It's fantastic. I love this story.
Yeah, yeah. And actually it's kind of ironic. I just watched Coda last night on Apple TV. Um, but you can see, and as someone who I was hearing, but I wasn't able to speak for a couple of weeks, I can see how having spaces that allow you to sign more easily and more easily read lips, and to be able to see other people signing, can be so important for equitable conversations to occur, and to have those spaces built around the needs for the additional needs. Everything that we look at is designed by hearing people and by speaking people, and so we don't take into account what might be needed for someone else who can't hear or can't speak or both.
Absolutely. I think that you're absolutely on target. And, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And I love that this is an equity piece. It's something that levels the playing field. It's certainly valuable for the students, but again, it's something that can really benefit everyone, taking away hierarchy in particular. But there's lots of different elements that I think are really powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, the next story is about how a lot of brands, especially in the beauty industry, are now showcasing older women in ads, and there's actually a new age-positive stock photo library launched to represent age diversity. And I think this is fantastic because there's not a lot of age diversity in advertisements, especially in advertisements that are um, for products for products that are not specifically for older people.
Yeah.
So again, this is about destigmatizing, normalizing aging, and also providing artwork that everyone can use just to showcase diversity.
Yeah, and as someone who transitioned directly into invisibility, being 52 years old, um, it's good to see representation outside of medical pharma ads that are targeted at people over a certain age, or AARP ads, which I now get.
Right.
It's nice to see representation in ads that are just for people in general.
For people in general. And that stock photo library,
Yeah,
which you can find if you go to theequalityinstitute.com/blog. You will see a link to this week's newsletter, and you will see a link to the stock photo library. That is, and maybe Corey will put it in the chat for you all. That is something that anyone can use. So if your organization has a careers page, you can add those types of photos to the careers page, or any sort of marketing that you're doing, promotions. Those are the types of images which can really make a difference. It sends a signal that you are inclusive of everyone, and that's really the goal here. Okay, and the last story, speaking of representation, Patti, is about a trans woman's quinceanera. So it is an ad created by Pantene Hair Care, and it follows along a Mexican trans woman who never got to have a quinceanera because she came out as trans later on. And I think 26 years later, she's getting her quinceanera, and it shows the story of her acceptance and her family's acceptance. And it's a goosebump inducing short film, about 5 minutes long. So worth a look.
yeah. Thanks for making me cry. Tears of joy, but yeah, just definitely an emotional. As someone who is a late transitioner and missed all those. I'm not Mexican, so I didn't have an opportunity for a quinceanera, and but I found myself kind of daydreaming lately about, and I think it's because I've been talking to a lot of friends from high school about, like, you know, my memories, what they could have been. So it's really good to see that she had an opportunity to be supported by her family, to have her quinceanera, um, and to build that memory for herself.
Absolutely, and it's representation, and we still do not see a lot of trans people represented in ads. We still don't see a lot of trans people represented in media, certainly relative to the population.
Yeah,
And this representation does matter. Those stories really do matter. The authenticity of this film, I think, is really significant. There's nothing about it that feels fake. I mean, it's just a beautiful story.
yeah,
And
yeah. It really is, and I think this is not the. I don't think this is the first time Pantene has done something like this. So I just have to. I don't use their product. Maybe I should, but it's nice to get that support.
it absolutely is. All right. Well, that is this week's 5 things, and really appreciate you joining me today, Patti, and for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. We really do love talking about what's going right because honestly, you can find a lot of stories out there of what's going wrong, a lot of negative data, a lot of negative stories. But honestly, I like to lead from a place of hope, a place of inspiration, not a place of fear. So that is why I do what I do. That is why I write the newsletter that I write, and why we do this show every week to start your week off with some good vibes in DEI. If you don't already subscribe to the newsletter, you can get it at 5thingsdei.com. Thanks so much, Patti. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you next week. Take care.